Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for saying yes and for coming to have this conversation with me. Um, and so, for those who don't know you, or even those who know you, can you just go ahead and just tell me a little bit about who you are, your background, and all of that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So my name is Dr. Sierra Scott. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a licensed psychologist, and I'm also the assistant director for community engagement at the Vanderbilt University Counseling Center. And I've been here at the UCC since July of 2018. So going on a little bit of over what, 4 years or approximately that.
Mhm.
So that's briefly about just myself and my placement here at Vanderbilt.
Wonderful. Yes, and I know you are so busy. You have a lot going on. So I really
Yes.
do not, I really do not take it for granted that you accepted to come and do this. Thank you so much. I've
Oh,
been
of
looking.
course, of course. This is an important conversation, so thank you again for the invitation.
Yes, yes. Um, so I think that before I knew that um, you had this position at Vanderbilt, I first met you, I believe, as at church, and
Yes, yes.
and so so we have that connection, and I just thought, like, I think as soon as I started thinking about this particular topic, the first name that jumped into my head was you. Just because I know that I know that a lot of people, at least I would say, let me speak, I guess, from my background. It was like the idea of paying attention to mental health, mental wellness, going to a therapist was antithetical to being a person of faith
Mhm.
and having strong faith in God and believing that God will see you through it all. Um,
Yes.
so I'm wondering how, how you have been able to navigate that, or what responses you might give to people who are struggling to be able to, yeah,
Mhm.
deal with that.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you so much for that question. And so I think for me, my response is twofold when I think about first and foremost just myself as a psychologist and how I've navigated that tension that first arose when I was early on, even in graduate school, and what propels me now to keep doing this work. And then also the other part of that is then yes, the messaging or the responses I have given to clients or colleagues or friends or even family members, when they've raised that conflict. So, you know, sorry for myself. I just conceptualize myself as like I am a vessel of God, of the universe, being able to use, yes, all this, school that I, that I did in training, but first and foremost, just being able to be a vessel for any spiritual messages, support, and holistically speaking, being able to guide through knowledge, education, skills, and then also just my personhood and all the visible and invisible identities that I hold when I am sitting across from a client and or conducting an outreach and even having conversations like this. So for me, when I feel very strongly that it is one of my primary purposes here on this planet, and I conceptualize it as that could not be a purpose implanted within me if that was not also in alignment with God's purpose and spirit's purpose for my life. And so that's how I put those two together and how it made sense for me. So I like to just kind of start there and being transparent about my own navigation of that journey.
Mhm.
And then the response that I have had and will continue to have, of course, being attentive to anyone's unique story or challenges that may be even prompting them to consider therapy is with that in mind. It's like, okay, if we're viewing therapists or medical providers, whether that's, psychiatric nurse practitioners, psychiatrists, um, as vessels, as vessels of healing, that we have had the opportunity, spirit given opportunity to go to school, get all this training, and also our own lived experiences from a multiculturally informed framework. Why not, why not take advantage of that? Why not commune with someone who, that's been their purpose here on this planet, who's really here to hear your individual story, to view you as a holistic person. Again, your invisible and invisible or invisible and visible identities to then support you towards better wellness, toward more sense of wholeness. So, and when I introduce these conversations with clients, I'm also only entering that with the client's permission, that they've already disclosed that either religion or spirituality is important to them. Maybe they've even shared, a specific faith practice, and then I will invite that dialogue. So I also just want to be transparent there. But those are some of the things that come to my mind in response to that question.
Mhm. If there are people who are wondering, where do I even start from? So like, what are some resources or practices that are helpful to have in, I guess, in our toolbox?
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
in our toolbox. So I think the first one that comes to my mind is just the everyday experiences we have moving about from meeting to meeting, or class to class, when I'm thinking about the Vanderbilt experience. But this can also be applied wherever you are, whatever your environment is. There is power in opportunities for spiritual connection when we are present, when we are practicing mindfulness and really being in this immediate moment. And also when we're able to connect with nature. And
Mm.
so, and in an intentional way. And so one of the practices that comes up for me that that feels nourishing to me and connects me again with spirit and with other people around me, even if I'm not like actively talking to them, and into my own body, is doing meditative walks. And so I do appreciate, some of the privileges that I do have as a staff member. Let's say if I'm doing an outreach, and it's across campus, maybe it's 15, 20 minutes ahead of, from the UCC, then I may just put some buffers in between like my comings and goings. So I'm not like, speed racing over there and having a speed race back to the office for the next obligation. And again, I acknowledge that because of my like leadership role, that I may have some privileges, and as a staff member able to create some buffer. So I want to name that. But in doing so, when I'm walking across campus, I'm slowing my pace down. Um, I'm really taking in like the trees and the flowers, and especially on this campus, I've never worked or even gone to school anywhere, but just so many where nature was abundant, or it felt abundant on
Mm.
campus. And especially right now, as spring is here, it's officially here, and things are blooming, and taking the time, like if something catches my eye, like to actually pause and to honor the spirit. Again, that's my way of conceptualizing the spirit that lives within that plant or in that tree. Or one of my favorites is passing by the magnolias on campus, because they remind me of home and my grandfather's house and just sitting on the porch. So being able, though, in that presence of mind and communing with spirit, to even pause and bring forward those memories that are replenishing me in that moment, and doing an everyday activity, like moving it pretty much every day, like moving across campus to programming, and then doing that same practice back. And so I like to offer that as one, again, because it's being able to connect with nature, and then also, connecting with people, and actually not being on my phone, not emailing or texting, while I'm walking to or from a program, but really looking folks in the face. And I think about, especially right now in our day and age where, I mean, I'm guilty of it too, like being stuck to our phones 24/7, and also like not really being able to take in someone's full humanity because we're rushing to the next thing, that even honoring other folks' humanity, thereby that's honoring mine, can feel like a spiritual practice. Um, and so again, that's one that I feel like integrates a lot of ways in which I view communing with spirit, and I view, a self-care practice that can be integrated throughout the day. And it doesn't have to be just on the weekend or once a month, or like that's something that we could potentially do every day.
Mhm.
And so I welcome you
Yeah.
got questions to that, but that was just the first thing that came to my mind
Mhm.
in response to your question.
Of course, and I love that you like that's the first thing that you actually brought up, because I don't know, like it's just a reminder that it doesn't have to be some huge elaborate thing,
Right. $500 spa day with
Right.
bubble baths. Yes. I mean, those are nice.
They're nice. Yeah, exactly. And
And,
also,
yeah, free is also great. Just saying.
yeah. Yes, but true. But yeah, so yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because then it's just the idea of recognizing what is already here and like just being present in the moment, like
Yes.
as you're moving. There's just something so beautiful. It sounds so simple, but like I mean, I know that I forget sometimes. I'm just like, oh, in a hurry, I'm going here, I'm doing this,
Mhm.
that I don't even pause. And so it's such a healthy practice to kind of learn how to pause. um Especially, yeah, like I mean, you were naming like sometimes, um some of us might have a little more privilege in terms
Right.
of
I
being able
always
to
want to
stop and
name
do
those
that.
things.
but
Yes.
um but yeah, there's just, it's good that we pay attention to that and like make it a practice to
Mhm.
always pause and to recognize, yeah, just like in this moment, what's happening in this
Mhm.
moment.
Yeah. And
Yes.
even just if I could quickly share another thought, it's like, and even in that moment, I know I was sharing like the meditative walks or just the meditative moving across campus, like that also be an opportunity to tune into my body because I'll also will catch myself like, oh, I've been walking around like this all time. Like, all right, let's roll those shoulders back, Sierra. As you're
Mm.
walking across campus, or I've been breathing. For me, if I've had a tense day, I'm breathing all up in here and just, not really taking deep breaths. So that's also a way in which to realign and recalibrate physically when you're being present and mindful. It's the power of a good deep diaphragmatic breath is really healing. And again, that's something that it seems so simple, but it's so easy to forget when we're so busy to be able to retune to that.
Mm. Mhm.
So I just wanted to offer that additional thought
Yeah.
as well.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Um, hmm. So yeah. So yeah, this idea of, because we were just laughing a few minutes ago about how you can spend all
Yes.
this money, but then you can also do free stuff. Um,
Mhm.
then that's bringing up the question of misconceptions that people might have. Like, what are some common misconceptions people might have about like mental health, mental wellness, self-care, all of
Mhm.
that?
Mhm.
But even before that question, now I'm thinking, I think sometimes I've heard myself saying mental health, mental wellness. In your mind, is there like a difference, or can they be used interchangeably?
Hmm. That's a good question. No, so this is just Dr. Sierra Scott's opinion, not on behalf of a whole organization or anything. I mean, sure. I do feel so I'm holding a dialectic meaning like a both and. I feel that language matters. And so I could imagine when folks hear the phrase mental health, that may bring additional images or conceptions, or when versus when they hear mental wellness, that may bring forth different ideas. At the end of the day, I think for me, um, whatever language is going to feel most inclusive depending on someone's individual and then yes the broader collective needs is what I would choose,
Mhm,
if that's going to be the pathway to someone then getting connected to support that they may be needing at that given time. And so
mhm.
I know that's not like a concrete, or it doesn't feel like a concrete answer, but that's my answer, is
That's
that
that's a
yes.
great answer. Thank you for that answer.
Mhm.
And so, so then the next question, I guess the follow-up question is just about misconceptions. Just one or two like misconceptions that people have when the topic of mental health, mental wellness comes up,
Mhm.
and I guess how we might address them.
Mhm. I think one thing that comes to my mind is a very practical one, but one that's very important is around confidentiality and privacy. I feel like I still encounter, particularly within a college setting, where it feels like depending on your identities or the groups that you hang with, like the circles just get smaller and smaller and smaller, right? I mean, then when there's someone like me, given my own identities and how I may interface with different student communities, that fear of like, are you just going to tell all my business?
Mm.
So I just like to be crystal clear that for all of us mental health providers, we really uphold confidentiality and privacy as a part of our ethics. And so everything that you share would remain within the counseling center system unless you share you were at immediate risk of harming or killing yourself or someone else, or you shared about some form of child or elder abuse, or you were being mandated. It was court mandated treatment. So, but beyond that, everything truly is staying between, yourself and your providers. And because we are a multidisciplinary team, like if you were connecting with another resource, then yes, that other provider who's supporting your care would have access to records, but beyond that stage right there. So that's one um, misconception I like to clarify is around what confidentiality and privacy really means. And that again, unless there's a issue of risk and or you have signed a release of information for us to communicate with someone else about your treatment, your privacy and confidentiality is being maintained. And so there's like a real beauty to that. And it is a necessary part of mental health treatment because then my hope is folks will feel empowered to come and show up authentically, being truthful, and knowing that it's their story is being held in a way from an unbiased party. And I hesitated because I say, like, I think we're biased in that our care. So there's a little bias in that. But beyond that, like, there's no judgment here. So that's one misconception I wanted to elaborate upon. And then maybe another one would be, so there's variances of how direct or indirect, particularly with therapists, we may show up in the room. Some folks may be more structured or regimented in their treatment approach. Other folks may be more process oriented. Let's dig into the feelings. And then there's some of us all the way, all sorts in between. Like I feel like I'm kind of a both and person, which fits my personality, I think. And so, but with that being said, it's like a misconception I would have or that I feel comes up is some clients may come in and say, I'm not going to have any control in this session, or it's just, me coming and the therapist is giving me advice or telling me what to do. That is not more often than not, or all the time, I would say that is not what's happening. It's really a collaborative experience and collaborative process. And then while, yes, we're coming out of our toolbox, right, of skills and education to offer, you as the client are the one that's setting the tone for the goals. Also, we're collaborating around pacing, depending on what you're coming in for. Maybe we're not diving right in, you know, or you might come in and like, yes, I'm ready to do this, or this isn't my first time coming to therapy and now I'm ready to work on this new set of goals and I'm open to diving in. So that's another misconception I just like to speak to is around the pacing and sense of control and autonomy that clients have, that is really about the client's needs. And yes, and then it's a collaborative process around the goals and what treatment will look like. It's not just advice giving and it's not just us telling folks what to do. So that's maybe one other one I would speak to as well.